Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be trying a different kind of strategy than I usually do in the Open Ultra League: 2 sweepers and a tank. This strategy is a lot less reliant on switch advantage and focuses a lot more on energy advantage and shield advantage. In the back, my 2 sweepers are Shadow Luxray and Charizard, which according to PvPoke are 2 of the strongest Ultra League Pokemon with either shield advantage or energy lead, and up front, I'm running the tank Umbreon. It's very bulky, and I'm using it to try and generate an advantage for those back Pokemon. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's see how this strategy did in the Ultra League. Hopping to the first match, hitting Umbreon into Walrein. Very neutral matchup, and it's a battle of bulk. Both Umbreon and Walrein are extremely tanky, and neither one is going to hit each other very hard. I'm perfectly fine with staying in this matchup and playing it out, as my goal is hopefully to soft lose this matchup and then use it as an opportunity to get an energy lead on either one of my back 2 Pokemon. As I mentioned at the start, either one of my back 2 Pokemon, they both have really good closing power, but their win rates spike dramatically when they have even a small energy lead, so that's basically the goal, is I can just use Umbreon as a gigantic damage sponge, or any other just very neutral bulky Pokemon, and then you have the glass cannons in the back that have a massive amount of closing power. I'm firing off the foul play. If I throw one more Snarl, I will be able to make it to another foul play. My opponent wants the control switch, so they're forced to empty their energy. But this is actually perfect, as I can just let this go, bring in Charizard, and Charizard gets 3 wing attacks, and with a 3 wing attack head start, I believe Charizard's win rate spikes something like 25 to 30% versus the meta. They send in their own Charizard, so that means they are guaranteed to be weak in the back. I'm able to fire off the Blast Burn, grab a shield, and now I'm going for the Dragon Claw. I'm just going to let this go at this point. I've gotten shield advantage, and Luxray should be able to close the endgame. Opponent goes for the Dragon Claw, and they're throwing their second one right away. So I'm just going to let this go. Trust in Luxray. Let's see what they have in the back. They have Clefable, so we do see they are weak to Charizard in the back. Of course, my Charizard is gone, but I've now set up my Shadow Luxray not only with an energy lead, but with shield advantage as well. Wild Charge doesn't quite one-shot, so I am going to go for the Psychic Fangs, and now I can overfarm and fire off the Wild Charge. This will be lethal. Opponent lets it go. In comes the Charizard, and at this point, I should just be able to shield once and fully spark down. They go for the Dragon Claw. Opponent cannot make another, and that's a good game. We see same leads as last game, Umbreon into Walrein. The good news is it's a non-shadow, so we know exactly how this matchup is going to play out. A very narrow loss in the Zero Shield that sets up Charizard to get the 3 wing attack energy head start. In some lead matchups, I do like getting the energy on Luxray, but in this particular instance, since Spark hits for super effective damage, I would get less energy if I Sparked down than if I Wing Attack down, because Wing Attack, of course, will do less damage. So that's why I'm basically trusting in Charizard to be the sweeper if I'm going up against a Walrein lead team, because I can just get more value out of that farm down. I continue to farm up, my opponent throwing on very nice timing there as they go for the Icicle Spear. I'm able to tank the Icicle Spear, go for the foul play here. I will reach the next foul play, and it would be a potential CMP tie. I'm just going to throw as soon as I get it to force their energy, and that way if they try and go for the farm down, they have to give up a shield. But this is perfect. I can let this go, bring in the Charizard, get that 3 wing attack head start. In the back, opponent has Swampert. This is a type disadvantage matchup, but Charizard up energy can put up a heck of a fight here. I fire off the Dragon Claw. They go for the Hydro Cannon. Since I'm non-shadow, I can survive this, and I'll be able to make it to the Dragon Claw. I go for the Dragon Claw, they switch into Charizard, and I should not have thrown that energy. That is not great. I can now send in Luxray, looking for the Spark farm down, going for the Psychic Fangs on the CMP tie to a potential Blast Burn. Psychic Fangs will be shielded by my opponent. Blast Burn would of course one-shot the Glassy Luxray, so I will commit the shield, but my opponent definitely makes the right play to go for the double Dragon Claw. I'm going to let this go as I can live a Dragon Claw, and now I need to make it to the back-to-back Wild Charges. I do still have that Charizard alive, but it's very low health. I can't make the back-to-back. I have to hope they shield the Psychic Fangs. Psychic Fangs does get shielded, and now this will be game over. Luxray, Wild Charge, takes down the Swampert with resisted damage, and that's game over. We see a very tough lead in the next match, Umbreon into Virizion. Immediate save switch into Charizard, and my opponent responds with a Bubble Jellicent. things going from bad to worse. If it's a Hex Jellicent, then Charizard can potentially make a play to try and force a shield from the Jellicent, whereas unfortunately with Bubble, there's just no way I'm going to be able to do that. Surf gets me incredibly low, and here I'm actually going to go for a slight undercharge on the Blast Bird. The reason being is I don't want to get them as low as possible. I would rather instead take damage on Umbreon and just get a massive energy head start. I am running Psychic on my Umbreon. Honestly, Last Resort, probably slightly better. In this game, Psychic, of course, is definitely preferred considering they have a Virizion. When I evolved it, I got Psychic, and I really didn't want to use an Elite TM. They send in Virizion, and I'm firing off the Psychic. Psychic does not two-shot, but it comes very close. This Sacred Sword does not KO. Again, Umbreon being the tank is absurdly bulky, and I make it to another Psychic. Looking to put some pressure onto the Virizion. Virizion commits the shield. I pivot into Luxray, and I'm going to be shielding everything. They're very close to a range where Psychic Fangs will be lethal. In the back, opponent is running Charizard. I can throw 7 Sparks. Wild Charge on the CMP tie to the Blast Burn, as Shadow Luxray is the king of CMP ties. Down goes the Charizard. Back in comes Virizion, and they're just running out of options. They no-shield the Psychic Fangs. That does so much damage. And the opponent concedes a match. We see another very neutral lead in the next match, Umbreon into Shadow Charizard. Shadow Charizard does have the ability to win the Zero Shield. Umbreon does win the 1s and the 2s, but honestly, I'm not too worried about committing a shield in this matchup, as again, I don't really care about switch advantage. I go for the foul play. My opponent, however, shields the first move, which is very interesting. So they are looking to keep their Charizard healthy. They go for the Blast Burn, and that does massive damage. I'm firing off the foul play. The good news is I will be able to get some damage onto the Charizard. Charizard doing a very nice job of overfarming, and they're going to have to Blast Burn to get rid of me here. Dragon Claw would not do it, so now I'm going to send in Luxray. As Luxray, I'll only have to shield once to get the farm down, so this way I get a pretty nice energy head start. My opponent is now going to send in Ampharos, and I'm definitely happy to see the Ampharos here. Psychic Fangs will be no-shielded by my opponent, farming up with the Luxray, and I do not want to potentially play to CMP in case they go for the extra. Brutal Swing is going to hurt quite a bit. I'm farming up and going for the Wild Charge. I should be able to withstand another Volt Switch and make another Wild Charge. Wild Charge shielded. In comes the Wall Rain. I don't get New Mechanic, and I think that just lost me the game. Oh man, in hindsight, maybe I should have just switched and not risked it, but Switch taking a turn, it comes down to New Mechanic, and unfortunately, my charge move does not register. So instead of one-shotting the Wall Rain, now I have a very healthy Wall Rain to deal with, and unfortunately, I cannot exit this matchup with the Blast Burn that I'll need. I can farm up, CMP tie the Wall Rain here, but I don't have a move, and the Ampharos does, so this will be game over here as Ampharos re-enters the battlefield with the Brutal Swing loaded. Brutal Swing takes down the Charizard, and that's game over. Moving into the next match, we see another very neutral lead, Umbreon into Swampert. My backline doesn't particularly enjoy Swampert when it's even energy, so I'm definitely happy to catch it on the lead. I'm going to farm up, go for the foul play, and just look to get chip damage as I always do. Typically, shielding the Umbreon, unless absolutely needed, is often the lose con when running a team like this, because ideally you want to be saving your shields for your Glassy Sweepers. So even though they are going for the Earthquake and landing it, that's perfectly fine by me. That is Umbreon's job, just to soak as much damage as possible. If they Earthquake here, I do live this. They're better off going for 2 Hydros, and they do go for the first Hydro, and I make the foul play. Now this should just about KO, so it puts some pressure onto my opponent, and they're going to commit the shield, and my opponent does not overfarm nearly as much as they could have. That is quite nice for me, as they could have exited this matchup with a lot more energy, and now I can take advantage of the misplay by shielding once, farming down, and if they're leading Swampert, odds are they could very well be weak to Charizard in the back, and they let me farm them down and send in Wall Rain. A Charizard, I believe I was up 8 wing attacks coming into this matchup, is basically beating anything in the format that's not named Regirock, so this is really rough for my opponent. Blast Burn number 2 gets no shielded, it's Trevenant in the back, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. We've got a positive lead in the next match, Umbreon into Shadow Nidoqueen. This is a matchup where having Psychic is beneficial. My opponent is going to farm one past the Poison Fang and fire off their charge move with perfect timing. I'm going to let that through, throw one Snarl, and return fire with the Psychic. Psychic does not one-shot, but it hits for heavy damage onto the Shadow Nidoqueen. I continue to farm with the Umbreon. This is not enough for an Earth Power, so it is just going to be a Poison Fang. Poison Fang connects. I throw one Snarl, and I'm going for the foul play. Now, this will be lethal. Nidoqueens love to shield, so they are going to commit the shield. I go for foul play number 2, but I end up losing CMP. Honestly, that's fine by me. I'm going to send in Charizard. I know that I live a Poison Fang, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to no shield here and then fully commit to the Wing Attack farm down, so I'll be able to Blast Burn whatever they send in. Opponent has a Jellicent. I am full sending the Blast Burn, and then it is Luxray time. Blast Burn connects. In comes Luxray in the back. It's an Obstagoon, and things are looking good. Shadow Luxray does absurd damage in neutral matchups here, but unfortunately, I end up overestimating Luxray a bit too much. Here, what I should have done was go for the Psychic Fangs into the Wild Charge to get the KO, but I thought it would KO. It doesn't, and then I CMP with a Psychic Fangs, which they also no-shield and they survive, and suddenly, what was a very, very positive situation, due to inexperience with running Luxray, I'm now in a position where I could very well lose the game. I'm going for the Psychic Fangs here, as I need to grab a shield and get the debuff. I send in Charizard. Charizard makes the Blast Burn. They're debuffed. Is this going to be enough to KO? Blast Burn barely does not, and Jellicent makes the back-to-back moves with a sliver of HP remaining. That felt like a very winnable game, but unfortunately, inexperience with running Shadow Luxray and knowing damage values lets the win con slip away. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Umbreon into Registeel. I save switch into Charizard, but honestly, this team is very, very soft to Registeel. I'm going to fire off the Blast Burn. Blast Burn does not threaten a one-shot here. My opponent does commit the shield, because even though it doesn't one-shot, they're still wanting a Zap Cannon debuff before they let him move through, and they do get the Zap Cannon debuff. I'm looking to overfarm slightly and go for another Blast Burn. The goal here is going to be to burn the switch clock, so that way I can switch back into the Umbreon and save the Charizard. The fact that they're staying in makes me feel like Charizard will have a ton of value in the endgame here. I'm double debuffed, but Blast Burn will be lethal from this health range. So I am going to be firing off the Blast Burn, getting the shield, pivoting back into the Umbreon, and my opponent does not throw a move. Instead, they bring in Virizion. And honestly, this works out great for me. I'm going to fire off the Psychic. That does quite a lot of damage to the Virizion. They're farming up quite a lot of energy, and they're going to need multiple Sacred Swords to get rid of the Umbreon here. Sacred Sword will connect. Umbreon firing off the Psychic, and here I make a bit of a misplay. I should have undercharged this Psychic, so that way I get more farm when I bring back in the Charizard. Most Virizions these days are not running Stone Edge, so I don't really have anything to fear when it comes to bringing in the Charizard. Whereas now I'm not going to get enough farm on the Zard to make a Blast Burn, so my opponent can send in the Registeel and get the one-shot with the Zap Cannon. That's a bit unfortunate, but I just have to trust in Luxray here. In comes Luxray, and it's a Pidgeot in the back. I can overfarm by one shot with the Wild Charge, and now I'm guaranteed to win the game. As when Registeel throws a move, it's guaranteed 10 turns off a move at minimum, and it's only 10 turns since I overfarmed by 1 to the Wild Charge. That secures the win. Hopping into the final match, we see a very positive lead, Umbreon into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. I'm going to be staying in this matchup, and my opponent decides to stay in as well, which honestly works out great for me. Normally, oftentimes, I do like to kind of soft lose the lead, try and get an energy advantage on my backline, but in this situation, they're staying into a negative lead, so my plan is basically just to win the lead, and then hopefully pivot out at some point to try and gain some kind of advantage. They're firing off charge moves here. They're going for Ice Punch. You do typically want to go for Drill Run in neutral situations. This move doesn't get same type attack bonus, but it's a way better move than Ice Punch, so it ends up being the way to go. I'm able to make it to the foul play, and this will be lethal. I'm still in the yellow, and they let the A-Slash go. Opponent now sends in Golisopod. Golisopod, a bit uncomfortable for my backline up energy, so I'm going to stay in with the Umbreon and force them to throw energy. My opponent is farming up. They're throwing energy. Liquidation will not KO here. Opponent goes for the X-Scissor. That won't KO either. I farm up, and they throw another move. Honestly, this is perfect. I'm just going to let this go, and I'm going to send in Luxray. Luxray, farming up energy. They're firing off a charge move with the Golisopod, and I'm going to shield. I can debuff whatever's in back. They go for the liquidation. It's a Dragon Breath Giratina in the back, and this is not good. I'm going to debuff with the Psychic Fangs, and you know what? I'm going to go for the Wild Charge. This is resisted, but this does a lot of damage when debuffed. Wild Charge, big damage onto the Giratina, and from here, this game is won. I can shield the Ancient Power, and just by brute force of fast moves, I can get rid of the Giratina. Opponent realizes this, and they concede the match. And now for final results, how did the team do? I played it over 5 sets. There were 4 sets that I played at midnight and 1 set the following morning. And honestly, it went pretty well. I went 14-11 with the team, around 2,800 elo. I definitely felt like there were a lot of winnable games that were left on the table, mainly just due to inexperience with playing Shadow Luxray and just general misplays and misreads by me. So it's a strategy that I do think has merit. Now, this isn't a strategy where you necessarily have to use the exact same Pokemon. I think Charizard is a really good sweeper just due to the fact that, honestly, it's just a meta Pokemon, but I would say the tank and the second sweeper are definitely interchangeable. You could as well also try a double tank plus 1 sweeper strategy. As we've seen, I believe it was M.E. Weedle who hit #1 in the world in the Great League, running 2 tanks, Registeel and Medicham, and Shadow Charizard as the sweeper. So I do think that especially when looking at Go Battle League, we do tend a lot of the time to fall into the idea that there's kind of a couple set ways to play it, but I think trying to think outside the box, trying to go for more unique strategies, can oftentimes have some pretty nice results. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.